Hi guys, welcome back to this channel. In this video, we are going to look at the topic firmware and interrupts. Now, let's look at the term firmware. So, when a computer starts up, part of the operating system needs to be loaded into the RAM. An example of part of the operating system that needs to be loaded into the RAM is the human-computer interface. So because this is needed for a user to communicate with the computer system. And this process is known as booting up. So the very first step in this process is handled by the BIOS, which is input or output system. The BIOS is stored on the motherboard, which is responsible for starting the computer's hardware and loading the operating system into the memory. Now, the BIOS is often referred to as firmware, meaning it can be used interchangeably. So, firmware is defined as a program that provides low-level control for hardware devices. So, the BIOS settings are stored on the complementary metal oxide semiconductor, and the BIOS settings would be reset if the battery was removed or disconnected. Now let's move on to interrupt. So an interrupt is a signal that is sent either from a hardware or from a software to the CPU. Now, the purpose of this interrupt is to make sure that the CPU temporarily stop whatever it is doing so that it can deal with more urgent process. So, for example, if you are using your phone to watch movie and a call comes in, now because those two processes requires the use of the same resources, which is the speaker, the system has to check which is of a higher priority and allows the incoming call to make use of the speaker. So that is an interrupt. So examples of interrupt can be a timing signal. It can be an input or output process. For example, a disk driver or printer requiring more data. Or it can even be a hardware fault, such as you pressing combination of keys like Control Alt break. So in simple terms, interrupts are how devices and programs get the CPU's attention when something needs immediate action. Now let's look at the flow of interrupts. Here is how interrupts work step by step. So first, a device sends an interrupt signal. Second, the interrupt is collected by something called the interrupt handler. Then the third step, the interrupt is placed in a queue, waiting its turn. Then the next step, so after completing its current fetch, decode, execute cycle, the CPU will check if the interrupt has a higher priority than the task it is currently working on. So if it does, then the CPU will pause what it is doing and service the interrupt. Now, this process happens so quickly that it is impossible for the user to even notice that a process is being paused. So thanks to interrupt, your computer can run many tasks and allow you to keep several windows open at the same time. So to wrap up this lesson, we say that firmware, specifically the BIOS, is what helps your computer to start up, while interrupts are signals that allow the CPU to pause its current task and handle urgent tasks. So together, this concept explains how your computer boots and how it multitasks so efficiently. So that's all for this lesson. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please do not forget to like, share, and subscribe.